Good morning guys, this is Yuvraj from Brainstorm Force, and in today's exciting video, we're going to learn how to add the recipe schema to your WordPress website using Schema Pro. So as you can see, I'm inside my WordPress website, but let's first talk about the benefits of having the recipe schema. And I'm pretty sure that if you have searched for any kind of recipe ever, then you know what the benefits of the recipe schema look like. And the recipe schema is actually one of the most unique schema types out there, not in terms of the data that you have to provide to Google for the benefits, but in terms of how widespread the results of it are. Let me show you some examples. So this is a result for iced coffee recipe, which I searched for. And the first result is a carousel of images and also some additional rich data that you can see on the screen right here. And this is the unique part about the recipe schema. No other schema type has this prominent results as the first top three are highlighted in a carousel or similar way. So this is another example. I just Googled how to make lasagna, and similar example to the one that I showed you earlier. You have a carousel of images with results on the top three results being highlighted as a carousel. And also these SERPs are also unique in a way that you can see images next to the search results, which is again a unique part, and no other SERP has this feature. And also some other benefits of schema that you see with other schemas as well. This is rich results. So you see the star ratings, you see the ratings, and you also see the reviews, number of reviews, the recipe preparation time, and also sometimes the calories, like you can see right here. And sometimes you'll also see site links to jump to similar recipes. Not all recipes have this, or not all search results will see this, but this is something unique that is coming up recently. So you should look out for that if you are in the recipe niche or you have a recipe website. And from these examples, you can probably understand that all these rich results are coming because all these results or all these websites or pages have structured data or schema onto them. And that's what we're going to learn in this tutorial as well. But before we jump into action, let's talk about the Google's structured guidelines or schema guidelines for recipes. I have the tab open. Let me open or switch to it. And this is the structured data guidelines for recipes in Google. And you can read about this. I'll leave a link down in the description. The point I wanted to highlight here was that in the search results, you have two types of rich results. Not in the search results, but you have two types of search results with Google when you have the recipe rich schema or recipe rich results or recipe structured data on your website. The first one I already showed you, and the second one which I was talking about was the guided recipe or recipe enhancements. Now these will come into play only when somebody asks their assistant on their phone, the Google Assistant, or even on a smart device. And if your website is properly marked up using the recipe schema and Google decides to use your website as an example, then instead of just going to the search results, the guided recipes can actually show the step-by-step information from your website, of course, to the user, guiding them through the steps of how to prepare a certain dish. And that is the meaning of the guided recipes. The user is being guided through the process. And Schema Pro has complete support for the guided recipes as well. So you don't have to worry about whether you need to add some additional kind of data. Obviously, I'll show you the complete process in detail. So let's head to WordPress and then we'll start the process quickly. Inside the website, I'll go to Settings, Schema Pro. And since we are creating a new type of schema, I'll go to Add New. On this page, you'll see all the different kinds of schemas supported by Schema Pro. Of course, we'll choose the recipe option and click the next button. Coming to the targeting options, these help us decide on what specific pages and posts we want to add the recipe schema on. Now, obviously, you will have multiple pages on your website and all of them will not be related to recipes. You might have an About Us page, you might have some contact information page or some other pages as well, which do not have a recipe-based information on them. So you need a way to tell Schema Pro how or which pages have recipe on them. And the targeting options let you do exactly that. So you have a bunch of options to choose from. Let me show you quickly what they are. So you have the option of adding the schema on all singulars, just the front page of your website, all the posts on your website, all the pages on your website, all the custom posts or different types of custom posts. These both are custom posts, and also specific pages posts or even taxonomies. That means you can add it to certain categories or tags or any other custom taxonomy that you have created. So I'll select the custom taxonomy option because I have a tag created by the name recipe. So all I did was add or type in the word recipe, and Schema Pro searched my entire website for pages, posts, custom posts, and taxonomies for the word recipe. And as you can see, you have a couple of posts, or I have a couple of posts that have recipe in them, but I also have a tag that says recipe, and I created this specifically for this example. And what you can do is just use a similar taxonomy or just use a tag or a category that you want to add the schema on. Now you don't have to use this on your actual website. What that means is even if you use tag to separate pages from whether you want to add schema on them or not, you don't have to display them on the website. So even if I'm using the tag recipe, I don't have to use it on my website. So I've selected all the tags or all the pages on posts and all the other kind of post types that go into the tag or recipe will get the schema. And I have similar options to exclude certain pages on my website as well. So this gives you complete control over where the schema should go. Once this is done, we'll click the next button. The schema is set up. Let's complete the setup and head to the next step. So this is the edit schema page, and you have a bunch of options here to customize the schema type. The first option being you can actually name the schema. So the default name for recipe schemas is recipe, but if you are creating different kinds of schemas or different variations of the recipe schema, you can just add a name here, and then you'll be easily able to identify what kind of schema it was directly from the schema screen. And then we have the targeting options, which I already talked about. Coming to the actual fields. So we have a blog post on our website which explains the same process that you are listening to or watching. So if you prefer written content or my explanation does not seem sufficient, you want additional details, you want to send it to your team and you want them to quickly browse through all the information, then you can use this link right here. It'll lead to a blog post on our website, and I'll leave a link down in the description as well. So if you're not a Schema Pro user, you can still check it out. So coming to the fields themselves. So there are two types of fields to talk about. One are mandatory fields, which are denoted with the red asterisk icon right here, and the other are recommended fields. Now, as you saw, the schema or the recipe schema in particular is already very competitive. So I would recommend that even if the fields are mandatory or recommended, you fill all of them up. Now, obviously, mandatory fields are mandatory to fill in, but I'm talking about the recommended fields. The more information you can give Google, the more likelihood that you will rank or you will appear in rich results inside schema or in the SERPs for recipes. And it's very competitive. If you don't have rich results for recipe, it's very unlikely that you will reach the SERPs anyway. So fill in everything that you can. Now, talking about the fields themselves, as you can see, there are a bunch of different fields to fill in the data. And many of the fields you can see that they're already mapped to the existing metadata on your page or website. For example, you can see the recipe photo is mapped to the featured image, which means that the schema data will be directly picked up from the featured image of the particular post that the schema is added on. Similar with the recipe description, it's already set to the content and the author type is set to person. And many other fields have to be filled in on the post itself. For example, the cook time, the keywords, the cuisine. These will vary recipe by recipe, so it's not practical to fill them in right here. So what I'm going to do is save the schema right here, and I'll show you or explain the individual fields or what you need to fill in these fields on the post itself, so I can get more hands-on and show you actual data instead of just talking about it theoretically. So let me save the post or save the schema right here. And the schema is saved. Let's head to the post. So this is a post that I created on my website. It's a recipe post about avocado toast recipe. And the information on the post is obviously dummy information because this is just a demonstration. But do note that this post has a tag called recipe, which was set in the targeting options as one of the conditions for the schema. So theoretically, this post or this page should have the schema. And all you have to do to check if it has it, just scroll to the bottom of the page. And we see the schema being added here on the page, and all the fields that we were talking about or we were demonstrating, we were looking at in the example when we configured the schema are also present here. Now you might be wondering why these two fields are appearing in red. What's so special about them? Well, this is a handy feature inside Schema Pro where it detects if any of the mandatory fields are not filled in or not filled in correctly. And then it notifies you by highlighting the field in red that this information is not filled in. And if you post the schema this way, then your schema will fail. And right now this recipe name is blank, which is very important obviously. And the recipe photo is set to a featured image, but there is no featured image on this post, as you can probably see right here. So let's fix both of these things. What I'll do is add a featured image to this post by going here. And this looks like a good image for avocado toast. So I'll select this one. And I'll set the recipe name to the title of the post. Now, if you want to map any of these data or any of these fields to metadata on your page or website, then you have to click this wrench icon, and then this field will become like a drop-down menu, and then you can select any of the meta fields from your website to set it as the schema data. So right now I'll set it to title of the post, and let's update the post and see what happens. So once the post was updated, I just refreshed this page, and now you can see there are no red fields, or the icons or the fields are not appearing red because data is being detected in those fields. Now coming to the rest of the fields, let's talk about what data should we fill in the rest of these fields. So let's start with the recipe description. Now this obviously means you have to describe the recipe, which means usually this will be the content of your post, and Schema Pro has already mapped it to the content of the post. Now if you want to rewrite, or you have a shorter description that you want to add here, just click this icon, and then you'll be able to edit this field and just add text to it if you like. So coming to author type, it's already set to person inside Schema Pro. You don't need to change it. Coming to the author name, it's already set to the author name of the post. But if you have a different author, then you can just click this icon once again and change the name of the author. Coming to preparation time, here's where all the recipe related discussion or recipe related schema fields come into play. And since each recipe is unique, it's very hard to fill in all this information using any of the metadata on our website or our post. So we have to fill in this, or we have to fill this information in manually. So let's start with the preparation time. Now this one is obvious. How much time does it prepare, or how much time does it take to prepare before you start cooking? So here in specifically for avocado toast, I don't think it takes a lot of time. So let's maybe set it to 10 minutes. So you have a handy date and time picker, specifically, just set it to 10 minutes and we should be done. Coming to cook time, how much time does it take to actually cook the specific dish we are talking about? Let's say it takes 20 minutes for us to cook the avocado toast. So we can set it to 20 minutes. Coming to the next field, which is keywords. Now, for any of these fields, if you don't understand or if you forget about what these fields means, we've included handy tooltip icons next to most of these fields. So for keywords, let's look at what it says. It says winter apple pie or nutmeg crust. Now, these are just examples. So since we are creating avocado toast, I'll just type in avocado toast. Coming to recipe category. Now, is this a dessert? Is it an entree? Is it for lunch recipe or dinner? Now for avocado toast, I'm assuming that most people eat it at breakfast, so I'm going to include breakfast. Coming to recipe cuisine. Is it French, Indian, Italian, American? What kind of recipe is this? And believe it or not, there's a fair amount of discussion around who actually invented avocado toast in the first place. So I'm not going to take a stance here. I'm just going to input Spanish. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Coming to recipe calories. How many calories does this recipe have? Now, obviously, you can't measure every calorie or be very specific with the calorie unless you measure everything beforehand. So just an assumption is also fine. Let's assume this avocado toast has maybe 350 calories. So I'll just put in 350. And coming to recipe ingredients, now obviously you have to input all the ingredients that you use to create this recipe. And you have to enter all the ingredients, just separate them with a comma. So I'll just pause the video for a second and enter all the ingredients that I assume would be used for avocado toast. All right, I hope it's clear to you how to enter the recipe ingredients in this recipe ingredients field. Now coming to the recipe yield means how many servings does it create. So let's assume that for this recipe, we have 3 servings coming up. So I'll just enter 3 inside. Now coming to the most important part of the schema, which is recipe instructions and recipe video. First, let's talk about recipe instructions. Now, obviously, a recipe is not a recipe without the proper instructions or the step-by-step instructions on how to actually make the food that we are trying to explain to a user. So having the recipe broken down step-by-step is very important for the schema data. So all you have to do to actually start adding the step-by-step instructions is to first click this plus icon, which will add a single step onto the recipe. Now, obviously, recipes have multiple steps and we can add more steps when needed by just clicking this plus icon, and one more step will be added. Now let's quickly talk about the fields inside the recipe instructions section. As you can see, we have 4 different steps or 4 different fields to fill in. We have the instructions name, instructions step, instructions URL, and instructions image. Let me talk about the first 2 fields, which is the instructions name and instructions step. Now think of them as the heading of a page and also the description of a page. Here you will provide the heading of the step that you're trying to do or trying to perform. For example, if you're talking about bread, you'd probably write toast the bread. And here you would provide detailed instructions. You could write toast the bread until it is toasty or dark brown or whatever color you prefer, whatever toastiness you prefer. And similarly, if you were talking about eggs in this process, then you would say boil the eggs here. And then you would write here, boil the eggs until they have a runny yolk, or something that you prefer. So here you'll write the heading for the step, and here you will describe the step. Now coming to the instructions URL, this one might be a little tricky to understand, so let me explain. Here you'll link to a page where the instructions are explained in more detail. Now this can be a URL on your website or even external websites. Now what does that mean? Let me explain that with the practical example. Now as I was just mentioning in the previous example about the instruction name and steps, let's say the instruction is dedicated to boiling eggs. So you write here boil eggs and then you give detailed instructions. But you might have a dedicated article on your website about how to boil eggs. Obviously, there are a lot of variables to consider. So you might consider linking to that article here. And Google might show it as a site link or in other places that we don't know right now, but maybe they use it in a different way in the future. Now, obviously, you might not have the URLs or dedicated articles about a lot of different detailed things. That is why you have the option of adding external URLs here as well. Coming to the image, instruction image is pretty straightforward to understand. You just select the image that represents the process after this step has taken place. So if you're talking about toasting bread, then add an image that shows toasted bread, not toasted bread. All right, so I filled in the information inside the recipe instructions. I fill in the instruction name, the step, the URL I've pointed to an external website, and also the images for both these steps. And now coming to the next field, which is the recipe video. Now videos are very important to recipes, and most of the time if you don't add a video, Google highly recommends that you actually add a video, because as you saw on the screen or in the examples before, videos were ranking or were the major part of the search results. And obviously preparing food or recipes is a visual medium, so it makes complete sense to have a video that complements the recipe or written recipe as well. So let me show you all the information inside the recipe video. So to add a video to the schema, you have to click the plus icon first. And in a similar fashion that we saw in the recipe instructions, a single video or a field for a video will be added here. Now obviously you can add more than one video, but most of the time one video should be sufficient. And the fields here are pretty self-explanatory. Let me explain. You have a video name that you have to obviously name the video, what your recipe is about. You can name the video, you can describe the video. You have to select a thumbnail for the video, and you have to also mention the URL where the content is hosted. That means the link to the video. Now it can be on YouTube or other platforms as well. And if you host the content on your website, then you can enter the actual file URL here as well. Inside the embed URL, you will place a URL where the video can be played. So it can be a video to or a link to a YouTube video, a Vimeo video, or any other private video hosting service that you want to add. That's perfectly fine. Here you'll select the duration or how long the video is. In the upload date field, you will select the date that the video was actually published. Now, if you're posting the recipe in the text form on your website and as the video at the same time, then the publish date that is set by schema here will be fine. Otherwise, you can change the date to whenever the video is actually published. In the expires on field, you'll select a date and time after which the recipe is no longer viable to create. Now, for recipes, usually this is not the case unless the ingredients are missing or it's a very seasonal ingredients. Otherwise, most of the recipes can be created all year round, but this is part of the schema.org's structured data guidelines. That's why we have included this in the field. So you can leave it blank or just set it to a really long date so that it does not matter, even if Google actually reads this information. Next is the interaction count, which you fill in how many times your video has been viewed. So let me pause the video once again. Let me fill in all this information, and then I'll come back and show you how I filled in the information. So I filled in all the information inside the recipe video section, and as you can see, I have filled in the video name, the video description, I've added a thumbnail URL, I've also added the content URL and the embed URL, also selected the duration of the video, upload date, and also expires on, and also the interaction count, that means the number of views. And for the ratings part, this is where users will be able to rate your video, so you don't have to make any changes here. And with that, we've filled in all the information that is required by Google for recipe structured data or recipe schema. So just take a look once again, all the information that we filled in. I hope the information or the process was clear to you. Once it is, let's update the post and open up the actual post on our website, and I'll show you where to go from there. So I updated the post and opened up the actual post in a new tab, and this is how the post looks like to an end user. So visitors visiting your website will have a look, or they will see the post like this. And the reason I opened this up, because I wanted to set this first, because this is part of schema, so I want to show you how it looks. So once the rating is set, it's time to test the schema. And to test the schema, all I'm going to do is click the test schema button right here. And it will automatically start testing the specific URL in the Google Rich Results testing tool. So let's wait for the process or the testing to complete. The testing is now complete, and as you can see, the page is eligible for rich results. Bright green tick right here. All the schema types are being validated by Google. Let's take a look at all the different types of schema that Google has detected on the page. So Google has detected breadcrumb schema, guided recipes, review snippets, site link search box, and video snippets or video schema. Now, obviously, we haven't covered the breadcrumb schema or the site links search box schema in this particular video. They have been covered in different videos. So make sure to check out the entire playlist of Schema Pro. The link is in the description. But the guided recipes, review snippets, and video schema are coming from the schema data that we provided in this video specifically. Now, you might be wondering why the guided recipes and recipe schema make sense because we already talked about it, but what about the review snippets and the video schema? Now, if you remember when I demonstrated the page on the front end or a user's view, I also left a rating on the post itself. And that is because when you remember, if I go back to the previous examples, we had star ratings in the search results, and star ratings have to come from user reviews. So whenever a user leaves a star rating, it appears as a review snippet for Google. And if you just go here, you can see the total number of review count is 1, which was added by us particularly, or added by me particularly. But as more and more users leave ratings, this will actually increase. And this data is represented as the review snippets. As for video, it's kind of obvious. We also added a video to the recipe, and that is detected separately as a video schema. And if I open up the details, you'll see the post or the video that I added. All the details are being detected by Google. The duration, the expiry date, the interaction count, and also the video links and everything are being detected by Google. And that's it for this video, guys. This is all the information I wanted to give you about the recipe schema. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it in the comments and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. And make sure to check out the playlist of Schema Pro. We've done a lot of videos about different kinds of schema. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and also hit that bell icon so that we can send you notifications about future videos. If you like this kind of content, make sure to leave a thumbs up. It encourages everybody to create more content just like this one. Once again, my name is Yuvraj. You were watching Brainstorm Forces YouTube channel. I'll catch you in the next video. Till then, take care, stay safe.